Welcome to Champions of Rural America, where the heartland meets Capitol Hill. I'm Christina Loren. Energy powers agriculture, and farmers are exceptionally vulnerable to rising energy prices. I recently visited Washington, D.C. to meet with lawmakers for a practical discussion on strengthening national security and economic resilience with the surge of American-made energy, and what's at risk if we remain reliant on foreign sources. Striking a balance between conservation and energy production is often contentious and complex, and it can trigger lengthy legal battles and environmental studies that completely halt progress. Now, with the renewed call for domestic energy production, the Western Caucus is searching for solutions.
So what we're seeing in production in America is slowing up. We're just beginning to see it. It's far from over. It'll be 10 years before we feel the full impact of it. And that's really the dangerous part about government. We can't take an industry and every time we change a president, either encourage it to run or encourage us to shut down. And fuel prices, people think, well, it didn't go up but 50 cents a gallon. Well, to a farmer running multi-tractors, that's a lot of money every day that's being burned up. It goes right back to this administration. They do not want any new production of anything carbon related. And until we can change the environment, the attitude of government as a whole and how we deal with energy, we're in trouble. It's Venezuelan oil that's being brought in. It's not our own oil, it's actually from Venezuela. So when you fill your car up, just think about that communist country that you're supporting. That is unfair to we the Americans. I want to be energy independent. This country wants to be energy independent. I don't think you'll find anyone that will disagree with that. Other than some environmental groups, they will. They're okay with buying Venezuela, which is the nastiest oil known to man. It is just horrible. We've got the cleanest that can be produced. It's produced right there in the Gulf, in several places within the continental United States. But the environmental groups are really, really working with the president and getting things shut down.
What I find fascinating is that the Venezuelan oil companies, they're not giving back to our conservation efforts here in the United States, but American oil companies are.
The oil industry as a whole does so much for just the community. They have a self-imposed tax that is called Go Mesa. And that's a tax dollar that we get in Mobile, for example. 2020, we got $26 million from that tax that's imposed on them. We use that $26 million in the Gulf Coast region for environmental projects. So we did huge restoration of grass fields, all earmarked for environmental projects.
You have a proven track record of delivering for the state of Louisiana and for the American people, especially when it comes to energy. Right now, energy costs are top of mind with the disruption in the Middle East. What is preventing us from increasing our energy output in the Gulf of Mexico?
Yeah, it is 100% based upon bad policy decisions. And there's nothing else that's obstructing us. In fact, you would have to go back to the Truman administration to have a situation where you have fewer acres of area that are leased or available for energy production in the Gulf of Mexico. This administration's been amazing. I have never heard anyone in my life say, hey, if I could just have that Jimmy Carter energy policy again, yet. When Jimmy Carter was president, he had offered 100 times more acres of land available or waters available for energy production. And so, I mean, this is really crazy what's happening. The biggest impact is to the American people that can least afford it right now. So this is, we have the resources, we have the know-how. Look, it is amazing. Every time you have somebody who does bad energy policy like this, what ends up happening is we don't decrease our demand for energy. The only thing that happens is that prices go up and we become more dependent upon foreign sources. So just to put a number on it, Iran, the country of Iran that hates us, that's funding the Hamas terrorists, they profited an additional $60 billion. $60 billion because they're benefiting from our lack of new production. They're exporting energy all over the world. They're getting the higher prices because we're not producing and there's not enough supply. It is incredible. Venezuela, another country, $65 billion in additional profits. And it's not just about refilling your car. It's about utility bills. It's everything uses energy. It's about groceries. It's about the things you order off of Amazon. It's about your farms. One of the most important feedstocks for fertilizer is natural gas. I mean, all of these costs are just driving up and up and up, cascading or snowballing through the economy. And I can't say it enough. It harms those the most who can afford it the least.
Do you think if the prices do start to come up considerably, that you're going to get more bipartisan support for domestic energy production.
Well, I certainly would hope so. The problem is that it takes a lead time. You can't just say, hey, let's turn the spigot on today. You actually have to do all of the exploration work on the front end that can take years.
The state that you represent, population-wise, has the fewest number of people, yet you have the third highest energy output of any other state. Talk about the minerals and the potential that Wyoming has to offer when it comes to energy.
Well, I'm very proud of my state. Yes, we're the least populated state in the nation. We have between 560 and 580,000 people. We're one of the very largest energy producers in the nation. We're the largest coal producer, and we have a lot of oil and gas. We also have the highest quality, largest resource of nuclear of any state in the nation. So we are an energy powerhouse. I'm extremely proud of the fact that Wyoming makes people's lives better, and that's the way that I describe it. My mother is going to be 100 years old 2 weeks from now, and I often think about what has changed in the last 100 years and what she has experienced, what she has seen. And when you think about human history, it is the invention of the internal combustion engine. It is the ability to harness our energy resources that really changed the course of history. For hundreds of thousands of years, people lived fairly poor lifestyles. They lived where they spent the vast majority of every single day trying to find food to put on their table and a roof over their head. And starting with energy production and mass energy production, commercial energy production, our lives changed. And that's what's so sad about it. What is keeping us from accessing the energy resources that we're entitled to is bad energy policy, whether it is under President Biden, Obama before him, but really it's been the last 30 to 40 years with the radical environmental movement. It's an anti-humanist type of mentality, and it is this idea that if we impoverish people today, maybe 100 years from now, the earth will be 1 degree cooler. First of all, that's nonsense. They are ignoring the science, they are ignoring the reality, and the fact is much of the data that they rely upon to make those kinds of predictions has been compromised. In fact, 96% of the climate data that they rely on for their models has been compromised. Yet they are basing their policies and spending literally trillions of dollars to implement the Green New Deal with the idea that they're going to take away our affordable energy. One of the old adages is really coming true, which is those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. I'm old enough to remember the 1972 oil embargo. I am old enough to remember when we had gas lines. And I'm also old enough to remember that under Jimmy Carter, we had 15 to 18% interest rates and 15 to 18% inflation. And as a result, our small businesses, our ranches and farms were absolutely decimated across this country. And it's taken over 40 years for people to rebuild. And one of the other things that happened after the 1972 oil embargo was we created what was called the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. We started filling that in the late 70s, early 1980s. It takes over 9 years to fill our SPR, over 9 years. It is now down over 50% because Joe Biden has been tapping into it in an effort to try to keep some prices down as he has ratcheted up imports from Iran and Venezuela and Russia. One of the things that people are going to have to do is they've got to go vote. I'm concerned about the next year and what's going to happen. We've got a war in the Middle East. I don't know what's going to happen there, but I don't believe that that's going to be a short-term issue. I think that we're looking at a long-term battle that is going to affect worldwide prices for oil and gas and many, many other resources.
Coming up on Champions of Rural America, an Alaskan mayor shares concerns for his community in the face of environmental restrictions that could erode the economic well-being of his small town. And fueling independence, Senate Western Caucus Chair Cynthia Lummis proposes a legislative push to expediently move toward greater self-sufficiency in American energy production. Welcome back to Champions of Rural America. I'm Christina Loren. Pursuing domestic energy solutions is a top priority for members of the Western Caucus, and lawmakers are moving forward with common sense, timely legislation to tackle a significant hurdle that hinders development, the exceedingly long permit process. Senate Western Caucus Chair Cynthia Lummis is leading the charge. Farmers and ranchers know all too well the vital role that energy production plays in their day-to-day operations. And a number of ag lawmakers say now is not the time to cut back on domestic production or cut it off. Now, members of the Western Caucus have put forth new legislation that will help to streamline the energy permitting process.
When everyday Americans go to the grocery store and they are carrying 2 bags of groceries that have $150 worth of groceries in just 2 bags, you know that this is affecting the cost of living. And much of those costs are related to the energy required for the trucks to get those products on those shelves. In addition, then you go to the gas pump and you're paying an extraordinary amount of money for fuel. It permeates our economy. And so I think people, everyday people, trying to absorb these additional costs are going to become more aware of the importance of having American energy that is reliable, dependable, and clean. One of the big problems that we have in the United States with regard to our energy production is not only a hostile administration right now, but we have so many delays in permitting, so many opportunities for activist environmentalists to file frivolous lawsuits, that it's now taking 20 years, if you start now, to get a permit to mine. Now, that said, when you look at the expansion in electric vehicles, we're anticipating the need for 30 times more minerals necessary to create the batteries to have electric vehicles in those 20 years. Yet it takes 20 years to get the permits. So it's important that we pass permitting reform. There's certainly an appetite for this among Republicans, and even people that advocate green energy are seeing delays in permitting because of permitting backlog. So the Repair Act is designed to address this. We're hopeful that we can get more bipartisan support for having permitting reform. Let's fight it out in different avenues. Let's just not kill these projects by delaying them to death.
And we appreciate the work that Senator Cynthia Lummis is doing. We know that balancing the needs of human and environmental interests is essential for a sustainable future. But striking a middle ground means effectively protecting biodiversity while also addressing socioeconomic needs of humans. In September, the Interior Department under the Biden administration announced it will cancel the last remaining oil leases in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, or ANWR, a move that will restrict drilling on 13 million acres in the National Petroleum Reserve, Alaska. The Western Caucus Foundation recently held a Senate energy panel, and the needs of rural Alaskans were featured front and center.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Western Caucus Foundation DC Connect Roundtable. We do these DC Connects so we can bring Washington and connect them with the rest of the country and Western and rural America.
The Western Caucus will be the voice of reason on this issue. I want to point out how Senator Dan Sullivan of Alaska and Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota have been relentless advocates and allies on putting together a strategy for a time when America is ready to once again unleash American energy and resume its place as the world energy leader. So we'll continue to push our message that domestic production is the only path forward. Thank you for allowing me to kick off this terrific conversation.
Thank you all for being here today. Let's start with the Alaska cancellation of those leases. Mr. Mayor, can you speak to how that affects your communities and go from there?
Thank you, Andrew. I'm the newly elected mayor of the North Slope Borough, which is essentially, if you look at the map of Alaska, our jurisdiction is everything north of the Brooks Range, which has been our kind of traditional border. In regards to the cancellation or the new rules that are coming out in regards to ANWR and NPRA, so essentially NPRA is the left half of my borough. We're not asking for a handout, we're asking for a hand up kind of thing. We want to be able to participate in helping provide for the nation, helping provide for the state, and ultimately helping provide for ourselves. So
when you price us out of our region by not giving us the opportunity to pursue our own economic freedom, essentially, that's a problem for us, because you're going to kill our culture and our traditions. And so, yeah, I think I'm just another voice for my people in the long history of voices for our people that we've had, and I'm going to do my part the best that I can. And because at the end of the day, it's always been about being able to provide for our family and our community. It's the sense of duty that is bigger than yourself, and as long as everybody has that sense of duty, then you can have a community that thrives. The first 2 miles of the coastline is critical habitat, right? We see all these different attacks on just our ability to access the things that are in our backyard, whether it's an animal or whether it's the resource under our feet. And so, just a little bit of the borough's work ahead of us.
Mr. Mayor, in Alaska, just always like to put this in perspective. How much is a gallon of diesel fuel in your community?
$7.90 or $8.10 a gallon for diesel, and it varies between the communities. Like I said, we have communities that you can only reach by barge to service for fuel. We have 2 that you can only reach by air, so they have to get flown in on jets, and those communities are closer to $13 a gallon for diesel, which in those same communities, no natural gas, so you're heating your home and power generating off of diesel.
Off diesels, that can be $13 a gallon. How much is a gallon of milk in your community?
$12 a gallon, something like that. Pound of ground beef, $10.
A gallon of milk costs a whole lot more than a gallon of gas, but the gallon of gas is very valuable and very expensive across rural Alaska. We mentioned here, this divide, this, not being able to develop, not just, the traditional energy sources, but intermittent renewable stuff because they can't get financing, they can't get to market, transmission. When's it going to break? Like, we're going along here, we're going to hit, when is the energy situation in the United States going to break?
In the electricity space, it's already starting. Yeah. It's natural gas and oil. They've still got enough infrastructure and enough of an industry. It's on, it's under attack but not dead. But in the electricity space, you already are seeing these break. The blackouts you see in California, Texas, that is because of 10 years worth of decisions about shutting down reliable generation and promoting unreliable generation.
Next, on Champions of Rural America, a new ESA plan is met with a grisly reaction as farmers and lawmakers challenge a proposed rule to experimentally introduce grizzly bears to central Washington state. That story is next. The rugged terrain of the Northern Cascades in Washington state has been identified as adequate grizzly bear habitat by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So the government organization has proposed a rule to establish a non-essential experimental population of the grizzly within the Northern Cascades ecosystem. Non-essential meaning the move is not essential for the species' survival. Out of concern for some of his youngest constituents, Western Caucus Chair and Washington Congressman Dan Newhouse is taking on the grizzly bears.
So these bears can be, I've heard, up to 1,000 pounds, 600 to 800. They're big animals. Apex predator describes them, certainly, but you just imagine an animal that size. They have to eat a lot. My contention is that if this was a great place for grizzly bears, we would already have a population. There have been sightings, no doubt, over the years. In fact, over the last century or so, there have been sightings of bears in this area, but never a large number. There's bears up in British Columbia, for instance, and sometimes they'll come down, but guess what? They go right back up because this is some of the most rugged country face of the earth. It truly is. And so if they plop these bears down in the middle of the North Cascades ecosystem, and they're going to be hungry, guess where they're going to go? They're going to go into the valleys where people live, where we have livestock operations, cattle mainly, some sheep. We have lots of orchards, and pretty sure bears love fruit. There's towns that are there that are going to be attractive for bears to come to, and that's the concern. People aren't against bears necessarily, but they're against having them in their own backyards.
Each month, we like to give you an opportunity to get to know your champions a little bit better and learn about what drives their passion to serve rural America in our Spotlight segment. In this month's feature, we focus on Representative Harriet Hageman, who grew up on a ranch in the small town of Laramie, Wyoming.
I started showing cattle and livestock when I was pretty young. All of my family did, through 4-H and FFA and things like that. And in high school, I was on the livestock judging team. And then I ended up getting a scholarship to Casper College, a community college in Wyoming. And I went there in 1981, and I judged livestock for Casper College. Traveled all over the country. It was a great experience. The thing about livestock judging is it teaches you to be very discerning in how you look at things, and it also gives you the opportunity to really explain why you did what you did. So it was a great background. From there, I went to the University of Wyoming, where I received my bachelor's degree and my law degree, and I practiced law as a trial attorney for almost 34 years before I was elected to Congress. Not only is such an endeavor not the federal government's responsibility, this program doesn't work, won't work, and will end up wasting massive amounts of federal money. We've got to find a way to take this country back, because this truly is the last great hope in the entire world. America is the last great hope in terms of liberty and freedom, prosperity, knowing that your kids and your grandkids are going to have a better life than you. We are the last great shining city on the hill.
And you're a woman of faith.
We are at a point where people are understanding that it is imperative that we change the trajectory that we're on. And we're going to do that with our faith because of Jesus Christ and because we don't have any choice. This country has been blessed from the beginning, and we can't lose that.
This has been Champions of Rural America, brought to you by RFD TV and the Western Caucus Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time. I'm Christina Loren, to you and your family, wishing you a beautifully blessed evening.